Welcome back to DraftStars. We got 3 matches today. Hope you guys went well last night. We have the Panthers and the Knights. There's a 6,000 prize pool for that one. We have the 8,000 Storm and Eels, and we also have the 10,000 Raiders and Titans for your day. So I'm going to jump into the 6,000 Saturday one, which covers all 6 of those teams. And as I said, I hope you guys went well last night. Let me know in the comments how you guys went, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, get around that as well. But we'll start with the outside backs. And in these games here, I feel like there's a few less options in the outside backs than there is in the forwards, for example, and then a couple less than the forwards in the halves and the hooking position. So in this one, I'm probably looking to go a little bit lighter with spending my cash if I'm thinking about my strategy here. And if you were to spend a little bit of cash, then I'd say Dane Gagai would be the one to splash it on. The only worry here is he's up against the Penrith Panthers, and they're slightly better team than the couple that he's come up against in the first 2 rounds, but you can't argue with his stats. An average of 82 with an 80 and an 84 across those 2 games. So if you wanted to spend up in the wing fullback, outside backs position, then Gags will be your man. Perhaps has been a little bit slow to start the season, so I'd probably be holding off on him, for example. The next guy I'd look to pick is Isaac Tungor. So him, averaging 64 over those first 2 games, absolutely incredible for a guy that's only that's played less than 10 NRL games. So he's been absolutely incredible in the centres to start this year with a 66 and a 61. So at that 13,000 price point, you only need around a 45 to 50 from him to get some value, and he has that opportunity to do that against a Newcastle team who is obviously unproven. And if Penrith can get on top of him early, then Tungor can be one of those guys that can really dominate. So he's someone that I think is going to be a decent pick for your squad this week. Someone who's been absolutely dominant in obviously his 2 games, but especially last week, scoring 2 tries, and if he can get him one-on-one with anyone, he is very, very tough to stop. And you're coming up against a Canberra side who had a really, really tough game against the Cowboys. So I think Greg can have a really nice game. You don't have to spend up to get him. So I think that's a solid one there. Guys like Gutho are slightly interesting, but just coming up against Melbourne, I find it's going to be a little bit of a tougher night from him. He's had 10.8 and a 32. So I think you can steer clear from Gutho in this game and go for some other guys in Greg, for example. 1 or 2 other guys that I think are slightly interesting at that cheaper price would be Matty Tomoko. So he had a very, very low game last week with 12, but 46.5 the first game. And if they can live up to their hype a little bit more from what happened in round 1, then I can see Matty getting somewhere around that 40 mark. So if you're looking to, for that more boom or bust player, then Matty would be a good idea for your squad, I'd say. And the last one in this section would be Stephen Crichton at that 11,140 mark. So he's been super consistent with a 52 and a 32 in the first 2 games. And again, at that 11,000, you can get anything above that 35, 40. If he has a chance to score a try, then he'll get up around that 50 mark. So I think Stephen Crichton would be really, really good for your sides. And then anyone else lower than that, I think you've got guys like Anari Tuala who would be okay, but again, up against a good squad. Xavier Coates as well at the 9K price point, but other than that, it's slimmer pickings down below. So probably spend around that mid tier in the outside backs, and then we'll be able to load up a little bit more. So our halves are now hooking position. A lot of guys to be thinking about here. And you can obviously go strong up top with guys like Munster or Moses, but personally, I'd probably think Munster's your man out of those 2. But Toby Sexton, I think, has at about $1,000 cheaper than Munster, has a little bit more upside coming up against the Canberra Raiders. So Munster's going to do well against most teams. Moses will also do okay, but I think he'll get less try assists this game, which is really dominated over that first few. Munster, as I said, is going to be pretty solid overall, but at that $1,000 less price point, you'll be able to get Toby up against Canberra, and he's going to do the majority of the kicking. He should be able to, should be a higher scoring game, and I think he would be a great pick for anyone's side. Hughes and Whiten are obviously going to be great as well, so if you end up having a little bit extra in your salary cap, and you can get up to one of those guys, and I think that would be awesome also. If you move down a little bit lower, then someone like Tommy Starling at the just under 14,000 would be a really good option. It looks like he's going to get close to 80 minutes this week. Trevelyan is not on the bench, and we see Matt Frawley in there. So Frawley will be someone to cover injuries and maybe take 10 minutes off Schneider, for example. But I doubt he's going to be playing any time at hooker. So I think Starling with his 42.6 average will be able to score somewhere in the 50s this week and be a good option for you. I think Randall has really outdone himself over the first 2 weeks there. So I think he doesn't provide too much value, even though he'd be a decent one to get if you had, if you didn't have that extra 1,500 to get Starling. I think Randall could be okay also. If you look a little bit lower, then someone like Adam Clune, who's had a really nice start at 9,800, could provide a little bit of value for you. 42 and a 36 over those first 2 games. Again, in 2 really nice wins. So will his points drop down a little bit coming up against the Panthers is probably the slight worry in this game. Other than that, Brad Snyder had a really, really nice first game. Will he play the 80 minutes? We're not exactly sure, but his 43.6 in that first one would obviously be a nice score, to help you, with him being undervalued and being able to dominate in this game and allow you to spend some money elsewhere. That would be a decent option as well. So obviously a lot in that section. I'd probably select 2 guys from this in the half hooker and use that in the flex as well. And on to the forwards, and this one is a pretty big one here. Personally, with Papali'i, I think you could get a little bit more value out of Isaiah Yeo. I think coming up against a good Newcastle team, which is funny to say this year, but he's at 19.5, and I think you can get another 80 minutes out of him this week. And I think eventually, it might be in 2, 3, 4 weeks' time, he'll start to lower his minutes around that 65, 70. So until then, I think you can really ride him out and get somewhere between the 60 and 70 mark with Isaiah. So he's a really, really good starter. If you want to be a little bit more risky, then someone like David Fafita against the Canberra Raiders would be a really solid option. There's a bit of noise out there that he hasn't been playing too well. Obviously, he hasn't been getting a lot of ball. It's been going a lot more to Beau Fermor on the other side. So Fafita, I think he needs to step up. And if you are feeling a little bit more risky, around that similar price to Isaiah Yeo, then Fafita would be a decent option. Someone that $1,000 cheaper would be Tyson Frizzell, and you can see his average is 65.8, has been awesome. So if you're thinking about someone who you're looking to get some consistency out of, has the ability to score a try as well, then someone like Tyson would be great for your team. If you're looking a little bit lower, a couple of other guys that would be slightly interesting is someone like Daniel Saifidi, who comes in for his first game of the season. So just be aware that he may not play super big minutes, but if he does, he's someone that can average in the 50s. So just, as I said, be aware of him in this game. Someone like Josh King, I'd be looking to hold off on. He gets Brandon Smith back. So will he play all that time at 9? Will King get 65 minutes? I'm not exactly sure. But if he does, he has that ability to average somewhere in the late 40s. And so does Sean Lane. But obviously, in a game where there's going to be a fair few tackles and running through the middle, maybe a lower scorer one, I think Lane and King would be able to do fairly well. But Lane, you'd be looking for more of a try-scoring effort out of him, which is harder to do for sure. All right, a couple more to go, and that would be Beau Fermor. So obviously, he had a really, really good game last week with 68.1, and you're sitting at that floor about 34. So if you at a minimum, you're getting that 35-40 out of him, and then has that try-scoring upside, then I think Beau could be a good one if you are lacking some cash in the forwards and you'd like to spend that money elsewhere. So he's a good one. And someone like Kurt Mann, who's had a little bit of a slow start, actually, moving to the 13 jersey, a 44 and a 35.8. So I think that 35.8 will be one of his lowest scores of the year. And I think he has the opportunity to score 40 plus. And if you think his price at 12,280, you can get some value out of him and use some cash elsewhere, then that would be a good idea. And then I think just one more to go. You can either make a selection between Matty Croker or Leo Thompson. I think Leo would be the better option at the 9,000 mark, where you get him, obviously averaging 28, but a light one in the first game with 15 and 41 in the second. So either one of those guys could get you somewhere over 30 for that cheaper price. So anyway, guys, jump into one of those matchups there, whether it's the total Saturday games that we're talking about here, or the individual 3 games. And obviously gamble responsibly, and let me know in the comments how you've gone, and we'll go through Sunday's ones and also review on Monday as well. So as I say, guys, enjoy the games today and have a good one. See you later.